In an unmarked SUV, which color blends with the night, Lieutenant Stephen Haberick drives along Range Union Street, looking for signs of illicit activity in downtown Lynn.
The same car passed me 10 times. There's no reason for it.
Lieutenant Haberick heads the City of Lynn Special Investigation Unit, responsible for taking on drugs, guns, and sex crimes.
You know, heavy traffic area. I mean, people drive by. You typically wouldn't find a prostitute standing on a dead end. You know, you wouldn't find them out of the way. You know, you'd find them where traffic is going to come by. John's, they're used to coming by this location.
Haberick loves his work, and he loves this town.
Growing up in the city and being part of this city, you know, I'd like to try to do what I can do to give Lynn its due.
And that drives his ambition to stamp out street prostitution and related vices that have given Lynn a reputation in the underground trade, drawing in undesirable elements to this city who feed on a smorgasbord of vices.
They drive up and they find somebody that's, you know, down on their luck out there working the streets for a drug addiction. That's not all the girls, but I'd say that's a lot of them. I'm not going to head to Marblehead or Wellesley to find a prostitute. And we try really hard to make it so they don't want to come to Lynn.
Over the past year, Lynn has been doing what many other municipalities across the state are not. Police here are arresting men who solicit sex in greater numbers than the girls and women who are being prostituted on the streets.
Prior to my coming on it, this is the old vice unit: prostitution, gambling, alcohol, drugs. I know they've been very active under the previous commander, so I'm sure they had impressive numbers as well.
Impressive numbers, yes, but as is often the case, lopsided. In 2012, 75 women were picked up, but only 10 Johns found themselves in handcuffs here in Lynn. A year later, when Haberick took over the Special Divisions Unit, police stepped up John stings. There have been 5 on his watch.
You can't depend on conducting one and then being free of the problem. It's going to creep back. We recognize that these John law operations are effective, so we also arrested Johns.
Lynn's roundup of 92 men accounted for 63% of prostitute-related arrests in 2013, according to state records. In that same year, police arrested 55 women. 57 miles away, NECIR and WGBH uncovered a picture on the streets of Worcester that is a complete statistical reversal of the current scene in Lynn. In Worcester last year, by one count, only 3 men were arrested for soliciting prostitutes.
And those 3 people were arrested in January of 2013. That's it.
Marianne Sarkis is a professor of social change at Clark University in Worcester. She repeats the number 3 in astonishment.
That's all we had for 2013. If we're not looking at specific patterns in the data, if we only look at 2013, that's a disturbing finding.
Worcester stands out among other Massachusetts cities because it is the only community statewide that has what is called a John School, a court-mandated program to encourage behavioral change in men who solicit sex. But, says Athena Hatton,
there has not been a John class since September 2013.
Athena Hatton is program director of Everyday Miracles Peer Recovery Center for women trying to leave the life.
Because there is no arrest. They have to be arrested to get sentenced to John or to have that option. But because we're not making the arrest, there are no referrals to the John program.
NECIR crunched the numbers and found that the arrest of prostituted women in Worcester nearly doubled from 87 in 2012 to 157 last year. The year before, it was 31 John arrests. So far this year, only 5 men have been arrested for soliciting, compared with 113 women, according to the Worcester Police Department. So why the gender-based disparity?
It's the million-dollar question. We don't know why it's not happening, and the difference in the arrest for the women and the men is disturbing, that they're not being arrested at the same rate.
The Worcester police aren't very vocal about this disparity. The police chief declined to comment specifically on arrest numbers, but in a written statement to NECIR, he wrote that his force generally focuses on, quote, reducing the visible presence of prostitution-related activity that negatively impacts the quality of life in our neighborhoods. And how is the quality of life being impacted? Athena Hatton.
I had a woman contact me on email, and she said that she put her trash out one night, and a guy pulled over and propositioned her. She was outraged. She spoke to other women in her building. It had happened at some point to every woman in her building.
Professor Marianne Sarkis and other advocates who are demanding a reduction in street prostitution say they need to sit down with the police and city officials
to try and find out what happened
between 2012 and now to determine what led to the glaring disparity between the arrest of prostituted women and their solicitors. The kind of police operations that are mounted in order to catch Johns may offer a clue. In Lynn, says Lieutenant Haberak,
we'd have a female officer, posed as a decoy prostitute, and the Johns come up and solicit sex for a fee, and then they'd be arrested.
In Worcester, advocates say police express reservations about this kind of operation. Athena Haddon.
We've heard it puts a female officer at great risk. My argument to that is when you join the police force, you know it's at great risk.
And it is dangerous, and no one knows that more than prostituted women themselves.
He had the knife pressing upside my throat, and all of a sudden, I was screaming, I was crying. I was saying, please don't hurt me. And so he said to me, he says, you like this? You like what you do? The anger that I heard in that man's voice. And I never thought I was going to make it out that car.
In Worcester, day or night, you can drive down Main Street as I'm doing now, and the telltale signs of the life can be spotted at bus stops in front of vacant lots and bustling stores as drivers slow down to ask how much.
Me and the guy was sitting in the car. He had his clothes off. And we were sitting there talking, and that was his fetish. I still had all my clothes on. The cops came by, told him to pull his clothes up, and arrested me.
These women were recently interviewed for Clark University's oral history project of prostituted women in Worcester. The joint WGBH-NECAR investigation comes 4 years after Massachusetts legislators passed a law that increased fines and jail time for sex buyers. Along the Mass Pike and part of the way along 95 north toward Lynn, I'm listening to a John Legend track. A song about a woman trapped in the life. It's the kind of woman Lieutenant Stephen Haberak on patrol hours later says he's arrested more times than he would have liked.
We don't want the girls out here, and that's why we'll target males, because we don't want them up and down here. These shops trying to do their business, they don't want somebody standing out in front dropping needles or going behind their business, doing their business.
Even on a chilly night like this?
Yes. Wintertime, summertime, it really doesn't matter.
It's a quiet night.
Hey, Doc, what's up?
Haberak responds to a heroin overdose at a hospital, and leaving the facility, he steers his unmarked SUV along the usual cruising avenues looking for drivers who are looking to score.
Frankly, if they have to go someplace else, then that's a benefit for us. But, in all due respect, we're not just shifting our problem to Chelsea. We're dealing with it, and if other communities deal with it as well, hopefully it'll have an impact on the overall behavior, and that's ultimately our goal.
Meanwhile, in Worcester, the rain on this day has not deterred whatever spurs men to drive slowly up and down Main Street. Anti-trafficking advocates are holding a rally on this avenue Wednesday to try to get police and city officials to do what a driving rain cannot: discourage men from buying sex from desperate women and to try to put a dent in the underground trade. Philip Martin, WGBH, Boston's local NPR.